Okay, this video is on how to read a safety data sheet. And if you look at a safety data sheet, and you should have a safety data sheet for every chemical that you ever come in contact with. For instance, this first one right here, it's important that the chemical name match the name on the safety data sheet because sometimes the names are very closely related, but they're completely different compounds that have very different identifications and hazards. For part B, that's probably the one that we're going to be most concerned with because that's going to tell us how do we identify the hazards. What are the hazards for this? So on an acid, you're going to see that there's corrosion or irritation is going to be the big hazard there. Flammable liquids, obviously the big hazard there is keeping it away from any sparks and that kind of thing. There are pictograms that we'll take a look at in just a minute. Signal words, we're going to look for signal words over here up in by the name, and that will kind of clue you into what is the problem with this particular chemical. D are the pictograms, and they talk about 8 pictograms. Actually, I believe there are 9, but there are some of them that we would never ever have in a classroom. Exploding bomb, the skull and crossbones, that really means acute toxicity. That would be like sodium cyanide or something like that that we would never have in a school lab. You would often come across health hazard, which could be a carcinogenic material, a mutagenic. Usually, again, we don't have a lot of those. There could be a couple though, some cadmium compounds. Flammable, we do have a lot of flammables. The exclamation point, not incredibly dangerous, but again, could be a problem if taken or ingested and that kind of thing. I don't think we have a lot of gas cylinders. We do have corrosion, so any of your acids or your bases would have that on there. So those are the pictograms. So coming back to the safety data sheet, you see that they have some pictograms on this N-butyl alcohol. Part E is going to have the molar mass, the formula weight, and they also have a CAS number. And the CAS number, if you'd ever have someone go to the hospital or something, you could tell them the CAS number, and that's unique to every chemical. First aid measures, if you need to, something happens, somebody ingests something, this is going to be something that you're going to want to tell the emergency room or the doctors. Firefighting measures, usually the fire personnel know what kind of things to use, but every once in a while they don't. So if you have those on hand, and they have a list of them too at the station of what is at Monticello High School, but if you can hand that to them, then they may know, hey, we should not use water on this fire, we should use dry foam or that kind of thing. And accidental release measures, basically if you have an accidental release, you should call me or refer to the spill section in the chemical hygiene plan. The back of the safety data sheet, we have handling and storage. We follow the Flynn scientific method of storing things, and so we definitely don't store them alphabetically. We store them in danger class or toxic class, according to the Flynn. Exposure controls, section 8 there, you're going to want to make sure that you're wearing safety goggles at all times for almost everything. Sometimes gloves, sometimes an apron, but for sure the safety goggles. Physical and chemical properties, it just tells you a little bit about the material, and that could be helpful. Stability, reactivity, the shelf life. Toxicological information, I don't know if you've ever looked at these and wondered what does oral rat LD50 mean. What that basically means is they took a bunch of rats, they fed them this stuff, and at 790 milligrams per kilogram of rat weight, 50% of them died. So it's a lethal dose 50. Probably the other 50% weren't doing so hot, but they weren't dead. Disposal considerations, again, I usually take care of any disposal that needs to occur for anything that would be considered hazardous. And you would just call me and I can get rid of that. So that's how you handle a material safety data sheet. Actually, they're called safety data sheets, not material safety data sheets anymore.